Improvise, weekly piano here, and we have a very special guest for you today, my good friend Ruslan Sirota.
Hey, happy to be here. We figured we'd get together and talk about some improvising and soloing, and specifically about what I find to be one of the most important and one of the most overlooked topics in soloing, which is motivic development, which is how compositional your solos are.
And Ruslan has a great exercise that'll help you codify this within the context of your own playing.
Let's do it.
All right? All right. Cool.
So there's a quote, I forgot who said this quote, but it really stuck with me, and I'm trying to live by it and play my music by it. And the quote, I'm going to paraphrase, it goes a little something like this. When you're composing music, it should feel as spontaneous and vivacious as though it was improvised. When you're improvising music, it should feel as thought out and structured as though you are composing. Right? And the ideal, I mean, it's an ideal we can't achieve, but an ideal composed music and improvised music should sound the same. Now, of course, they never will, but it's important in your composition to keep that live, engaging spirit, and in your improvisations to keep form, structure, compositional qualities.
Yeah, you want it to have the same depth.
That's
that you
right.
would hear from something that is structured
That's
and
right.
thought out.
That's right. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking that if you're improvising it on the spot, all bets are off. It doesn't have to have form. It doesn't have to actually make sense. There don't need to be no
just play whatever.
No, nonsense. That's not how the greats improvise. And so, okay, well then, if that's the goal, so what do we do? How do I improve
that aspect?
Yeah, right. That aspect of compositional qualities to my solos. Right now, I know I should have them, and I listen to my favorite soloists, and they all do have them. This is why they're great, and famous.
Yeah, anyone who's gone down in history, Herbie Hancock, Miles Davis,
yes,
Coltrane.
They play compositional solos. What does it mean? They have themes that they develop. They go away from the themes. They come back to the theme. Means they don't forget. They don't, as soon as they played something, forget it.
And then just go off on
some other
direction.
Right? Which is how most people play, right? Which is how the way most people play is as soon as they played something, they forgot that they played it, and they move on to something else. Now, because music doesn't have semantic language, semantic meanings, you can't call people out on it. Like if people spoke English the way they improvise, it would sound like this. I went to the store, and astronomy is fascinating. I just gained 3 pounds. No, I don't have a dog. Like that's if you could translate most people's improvisations into English, this is what they would sound like.
It's just random pieces of vocabulary streamed together.
Right, but because there's no specific meanings to musical words, you can sort of get away with doing that. But notice that I said sort of, but not really. You can't. Not when I'm listening to you. You can't.
Thematically skating.
Exactly. So this brings us all that to say that compositional qualities of your improvisation are very, very important. And so so what do we do? How do we get there? There are a bunch of exercises you can do to develop and strengthen those qualities in your own solo. I learned them from my great teacher that I had. His name is Hal Crook. He's a great trombonist and great jazz educator. He taught me a bunch. And then I developed a million of other ones on my own. And I'm really fascinated with that aspect of playing because to me, that's motivic development, compositional qualities is what makes music a language as opposed to a bunch of sounds.
It's what gives it meaning.
That's right.
Throughout the thread of what you play.
That's right. And it's on you as an improviser to make sure that's there. And it's amazing how it works. If you give people a thread to follow in your solo, they'll intuitively follow it. And if you don't have that thread that you yourself are following, they'll intuitively zone out. Because even though they don't understand what you're playing, their mind has pattern recognition abilities. And if there's no pattern, then what are you saying?
Yeah, you're transferring the same thing that's going on in here to that which is going on
That's
in
right.
your listener.
And people can sense that on many levels. And one of those levels is whether it's compositional or not. And the more compositional your playing is, the better. So I have a couple of exercises. I mean, I actually have a couple of 100 exercises. But we're going to talk about one or two today that will for sure get you started on the right path.
Okay.
And so this exercise I learned from Hal Crook years ago in college. He calls it variation.
Okay.
what is variation? You essentially, here's the deal. You play a phrase, you rest, and then the next phrase you play has the rhythm of the first phrase, but new notes.
Okay.
Something changes, but something stays the same. That's called composition. That's called developing something. And notice how immediately, before I even demonstrated, notice immediately how it already creates a storyline, right? I play a phrase with a certain rhythm, and then I rest. Then the next phrase I play has the same rhythm and new notes. So immediately the ear says, whoa, that's related. That's related to what was just played before, but there's something new. So already it's not random. There's already compositional quality built into the exercise.
You've created a framework for yourself that you have to stick to that creates continuity.
Yep. And if you do these kinds of exercises, you're going to start thinking like that in your solos. And you're going to have you have to tell a story. You have to tell a story on your solo. You have to tell a story. But what does it even mean, tell a story? Everyone says you have to tell a story on your solo, but like how? With which tools? Well, this is one of the tools. You can change the notes and keep the rhythm, and immediately it becomes recognizable. Something becomes, oh, wait, there's a developing story here. Something changed. Something stayed the same. Wow, where is this going? And that's how the ear responds to it. Well, let's try it. Why don't you comp a blues in F for me?
Cool.
With left, and I'll demonstrate it. I'm going to play a phrase. I'm going to rest. And then the next phrase I'm going to play is going to have the same rhythm. Now I'm going to do another phrase. I'm going to do another phrase. And new phrase. So we understand, right? So whether I do, I rest, and then I keep the same rhythm.
Yeah.
And change the notes.
Yeah. And the rhythm you're doing is just da, da, da,
ba, ba, ba. Exactly. And so I do a phrase initially, and then I play one or more variations on that phrase, and that's called variation, right? So it's very basic and very so simple, almost kind of too simple, but trust me, like, this is what creates, and this is just an exercise to get your brain thinking in the right direction. So the next one is called variation extension.
Okay.
So variation extension is almost exactly the same as this one. So, right, I'm going to play a variation on that. Like, and add. You understand what I mean?
Yeah. You put a tag on it.
You put a tag on it, exactly. I play the same rhythm of the first phrase and add something new at the end.
Okay.
Right? And so this way it's even more, you see how that's even more storyline developing. I play something. I keep the same rhythm from it. I change the notes. People still recognize, oh, it's still the same rhythm.
Keeping continuity, and
right.
then you're
and then I'm adding
answer
something
to
new.
whatever that,
right.
that forms a question,
That's
and then
right.
you have an answer
That's
at the
right.
end.
Let's try that. So variation extension. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Take another phrase and do the same thing to
okay.
That was the extension.
Yeah.
Another phrase. premise of that stuff, right? That's the premise. So you see, now, if you guys want to get really advanced on this,
All right.
I'm going to do a variation extension and a little bit of a complex permutation. What did we do so far? We did a phrase. We did a variation on the phrase.
Very similar.
Same rhythm, different notes. At the end of that, we added a little tag.
Which is the answer to the...
Right. Now, who said that the tag has to be after the variation?
So you can start with
You could start with
different.
the tag. You play the phrase.
Okay.
Then whatever you were going to put at the end of the variation, you
Put
put
it in
before
between.
the variation, and then come back to the rhythm of the first phrase.
So you're creating a symmetry there.
That's right. Well, the challenge is while you're playing this little new material, you have to keep in mind the phrase of the rhythm of the first phrase because you have to come back to it right away. So let me demonstrate that slowly.
Okay.
So here's the phrase. We're going to do a phrase like this. Right? That's the rhythm.
Yeah.
A variation on that could be or
Okay.
because the rhythm is da 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 da. So suppose I play a phrase da 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 da. Now new material is gonna come before the variation.
Okay.
That was
yeah,
that's the
yeah.
extension, and this
Yeah,
was da 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 da.
Yeah, you're doing a pickup to the
I'm
same
doing
rhythmic element.
and that pickup, just like we did at the little extension at the end, it could be short, long, medium. It's new material. It can be as long as you want. So.
I see.
See what I did?
Yeah.
I came back to that rhythm.
Yeah.
So the challenge is while I'm playing this new little bit,
Keep
I
that
gotta
in your
keep in
brain.
mind what I just said. Just like when you and I have a conversation, and I want to give you some kind of example or metaphor. I can't just start talking about random stuff. I could give you a complex metaphor, but if I don't keep in mind what this is supposed to relate to, then I'm talking nonsense. You're like, Ruslan, I have no idea what you're saying.
You keep the subject of the matter at the forefront of your brain.
No matter where you are branching out temporarily.
And this is something that we were talking about yesterday, actually, which is very important, is that it's this muscle that you said, right?
That's right.
Like you're
right.
pinpointing
That's
a muscle in your brain that you don't exercise a lot,
That's
that
right.
requires you to keep your attention
On what you just
exactly
played.
what you just played.
Exactly. Imagine if you and I were talking, having a conversation for a while, and I just don't have the kind of muscle to keep the context of the conversation in mind. And I'm giving you metaphors and references from literature and jokes, but it has nothing to do with the
anything.
subject, with anything. You would look at me like I'm crazy. But if I play like that, you'd just look at me like I'm just a musician who improvises, right? No. If music is a language, then it must be used as a language. And in language, you don't afford yourself the luxury of just dropping whatever you're talking about just because you have a metaphor or some kind of example from another field you want to bring. No. You have to relate that to what you're talking about. Otherwise, why should I bother listening to anything you have to say?
And this particular exercise will flex that muscle in your brain.
That's right.
That requires you to keep your attention on the subject
That's
matter
right.
that you are soloing about.
Are you telling? Because when you're soloing, you're giving a speech. And the speech can be interactive with the rhythm section to a large extent or to a smaller extent. But it's a speech nonetheless. If it's not about something, if you don't have a storyline, you're just sort of playing notes. It doesn't. So something like this is challenging because I have to keep in mind what I was talking about while playing this new little bit. And as soon as I'm done with the new little bit, I have to come back to that first thing I played, or at least the rhythm of that first thing I played. And that's a muscle, just like you said. That's not just going to come to you easy because that's something you have to work. But if you analyze the solos of your favorite players or the great players of jazz history, they virtually all play like that to some extent. Because this is why they're great. Their solos really were stories they told. There really were narratives to what they were saying.
Yeah, well, and you can also hear that in how it's extrapolated out, like how people take those solos, they'll put words to them.
That's right.
They'll put them into a context. That was one of my favorite things as a high schooler when I picked up Kurt Elling's Live in Chicago album, and he did the Wayne Shorter solo on Night Dreamer, and the Freddie Hubbard
and
solo.
And it adds up. It makes sense.
It makes perfect sense as a storyline.
That's right. It's a great solo. Okay, what makes it? That's what makes a great solo. Is there's a storyline. You weren't just running the right notes or in the right chords. You were actually you're making sense of your lines. And it's like so. Variation extension is when you play the rhythm. we play a phrase, you play the rhythm of something, and then you play a little extension at the end. The other way of doing variation extension is what we're doing is you play the phrase, and instead of giving the variation and then the new bit, you first play the new bit and then the variation. So again, the challenge is to keep the rhythm of the first phrase while playing the new bit, keeping that first phrase in your mind, because you're coming right back to that same rhythm in a second, and you can't forget it. You have to keep that thing in mind while you're playing something else, which is how we talk also, right? Yeah. So let's try that. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the original phrase. Ba, ba, da, ba, 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 ba. See, let's do another phrase.
That's really cool. And one thing I noticed that you were doing sometimes is you would not only stick to rhythmic continuity, but thematically there would be a contour that you also followed. You would transpose that thematic material to a different key, but it's not just, even in the context of different notes in the same two rhythms, it's not just random notes at any point.
Well, I also, I played music for many years. I also, in my choice of notes, try to make good choices of notes. Sometimes I succeed more, sometimes I succeed less. But when I tell you, Greg, you're going to keep the same rhythm from the first phrase and change the notes, I rid you of the responsibility of having to worry about rhythm, because the rhythm is going to stay the same. So that's in place. But the notes, you have to choose the notes. Yeah. But that's good for you, because you can now focus exclusively on the notes, because you don't have to worry about what rhythm it's going to be. It's going to be the same rhythm from the first phrase, so don't worry about that. Okay, well then so sometimes I'll do like and sometimes, okay, so the rhythm is going to be ba 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 ba. Okay, so what notes? I'm going to change the direction. It all goes up, right? So I'll do as a variation. I'll try to juxtapose opposite direction, or then I'll do on one note. I'm going to try to contrast. You know what I'm saying? So if the phrase was going up, I'm going to try to make the phrase go down.
Yeah, and that has to do with melodic development, development of the contour of your solo.
That's right.
Which, by the way, are all elements that you can see on Ruslan's channel, which is in the in the subject of this video.
Yeah, we'll put it in the description. Yep. You guys, I teach a lot of this kind of stuff, and like me and Greg, we talk about this stuff all the time, because this to me is the crux of the issue. Once you know how to play on chord changes, which any decent player can play on chord changes. Like if you're a beginner, it's totally fine. Figure out how to do that. Learn how to play on changes. Once you learn how to play on changes, truly, okay, so what's next? This is what's next.
And this is something that you do not get taught for the most part when you're trying to learn music.
If you do, I want you to show me where, because I have no idea. Some people talk about it here and there, but to me, mostly, even when they do it, it's just really on the surface. I have a motivic development series on my channel of 5 different videos, and I'm going to release more that go in depth. I can go as far with this as you want, and then I don't even know if I'm going to do... You remember the exercise I showed you in the morning? That's some advanced motivic development stuff. I don't even know if I'm going to do videos on that. I don't know if people even want to see that, but I take this stuff very, very, very far.
Well, let us know in the comments section if you do want to see more of that, because this can go very deep.
Absolutely, yes. And if you haven't noticed, I'm really passionate about this stuff. I can talk about it for an hour.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yep.
Cool.
Well, you know, I think we might want to leave it at that. That's a lot
great.
to work out.
Yeah, this is a great amount of material. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and checking this out. Check out Ruslan's channel, which is in the description of this video, and let us know if you want more material like this. Be sure to subscribe and like and share the video if you enjoyed it, and we'll be back with you for another soon.
Yep. Peace. Good shit.
Good shit, man.
Yeah,
it's great.
It's a good lesson.
Yeah,
they don't teach them this shit. They just don't.
It's cool. It's cool.
You know,
it's really cool.
Yep. And it's like this is just the beginning. You know, this is just the start. And then what happens?